Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kevin Kassab, manager of the Office of Community Engagement for the Borough of State College. Thank you for attending this town and gown celebration of Global Dignity Day. This is a day everyone, everywhere is invited to look beyond what divides us and recognize the dignity and humanity we all share. It is a great honor for the Borough of State College to host this very special day with Penn State University. At this time, I would like to ask the first speaker to come to the podium, Dr. Michael Wade Smith, Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff at Penn State University, who will be discussing what is dignity.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kevin. Faculty, staff, students, our many stakeholders, and the public, both in person and on live stream. My name is Dr. Michael Wade Smith, and I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff at Penn State. As I look around this room today on Global Dignity Day, I see individuals with different experiences and backgrounds, different identities, different hopes and dreams. And despite these differences that may distinguish us from one another, I think of Nelson Mandela, who said, "No power on this earth can destroy the thirst for human dignity." I think it's safe to say that we all have a thirst for that dignity in our lives. But what's that mean? What does dignity mean? Dr. Donna Hicks, a dignity scholar, researcher, consultant, she defines dignity as the recognition of the desire to be seen, to be heard, listened to, and treated fairly, to be recognized, understood, and to feel safe in the world. It's our inherent value and self-worth as human beings. A pretty bold and ambitious definition. When we think about dignity in these terms, it can become the foundation for how we get to treat one another, how we should always model and be treated and to treat one another. Embracing dignity and honoring the dignity of others allows us to create a universal common ground, so relationships can flourish and organizations can demonstrate the value they place on each individual. My grandmother, my abuelita, Margarita Diaz, was a model of dignity. She stood about 5 feet tall. She had a 6th grade education. She worked as a waitress well into her early 80s until she just absolutely couldn't anymore. And she was still to this day the very smartest and the most impressive human I've ever known. When I first heard the 1967 Martin Luther King speech that included the lines, "If a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets as a Michelangelo painted, as a Beethoven composed music, or as a Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause to say, 'Here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well.'" When I heard that, I thought of my grandmother. I like to believe that she was greeted with that heavenly fanfare because she believed deeply in her own dignity as a leader, as a person, as a thinker, as a family leader, but she believed and demonstrated her belief in the dignity of others through the way she lived her life. She used to say to me, "Mijo, you should learn from each and every person you meet." I watched her engage the truck driver, the mayor, the businessman, the farmer, the kid, and any others in varying stations of life in exactly the same way, with the same care, respect, value, and interest that she did with me, her grandson. And she learned from each and every one of them. To me, this is the heart of dignity, to be able to set aside our own ego in the presence of others enough to truly see them, and in return, to feel safe enough, to feel confident enough to allow ourselves to be truly seen. I'm lucky that I grew up in a world where I could witness that beautiful example of dignity and the difficult work of dignity each and every day. We all seek dignity in our lives. If we can find a way to see one another, to hear one another, to listen to one another, to treat those we encounter fairly, we can reach these goals to be recognized, to be understood, and to feel safe in this world. We can live in a society with dignity for one another and within ourselves. Dr. Bendapaudi asked that I convey her regret that she was unable to join us in person today. However, she was able to record a short video that we'll be able to share with you today on dignity and the larger Penn State community. After the video, we'll also get to hear from our wonderful mayor, Ezra Nanes, and excited to share in this wonderful celebration with all of you. And thank you for having me today.
Hello, Hello, I'm Neeli Bendapaudi, President of Penn State University. I am so excited for the inaugural celebration of Global Dignity Day. Penn State is partnering with the Borough of State College and Mayor Ezra Nanes to bring the community together and pledge to embrace and honor dignity at University Park, in State College, and across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Today, we join a global movement that's being observed in more than 80 countries. We are celebrating the belief that everyone deserves to live a life of dignity. Doing so creates an environment that fosters inclusion and belonging and a greater sense of our shared humanity and shared community. Penn State's values align with that environment. They include elements of integrity, respect, responsibility, discovery, excellence, and community. For many of us, these values are the driving force behind the words "we are." When we say "we are," we mean we are one community, and together we honor the dignity of others. I believe that embracing the spirit of Global Dignity Day is the very first step that you can take toward being a successful, engaged member of the Penn State community. Thank you for joining us in this meaningful step today. I'm now pleased to introduce Mayor Ezra Nanes, who will share the official Dignity Day proclamation and lead the recitation of the Dignity Pledge. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you. I want to thank Dr. Michael Wade-Smith and Dr. Neeli Bendapaudi for those eloquent words that you've inspired us. And I will say that as mayor of the Borough of State College, it gives me great joy to partner with you on a day like this in building community, as we are, Penn State, the borough, and our community, parts of a whole together. So I'm so proud to share this moment with all of you. So I will be brief in my remarks and instead read the mayoral proclamation that I issued a week ago for Global Dignity Day. And it goes like this. Global Dignity Day, October 19th, 2022. Whereas the Borough of State College is pleased to celebrate all that unites us during Global Dignity Day on October 19th, 2022. And whereas we are all members of one family, the human family, and therefore we all have the right to pursue our purpose and meaning in life and to reach our full potential. And whereas the municipality of State College is committed to recognizing and supporting the right of each person to live in a society that provides humane access to education, health, income, and security. And whereas dignity is a feeling in your core, a belief in your own worth, a belief in the worth of others. With dignity, we lead lives of hope and optimism and compassion, guided by a universal ethical compass. And whereas a life of dignity means you are as valuable and important, worthy and wanted as any other human being, it means fundamentally that you matter. Whereas the municipality of State College wants all members of our community to know and believe that they matter, that their voice, their relationships, and their actions matter. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Ezra Nanes, do hereby proclaim October 19th as Global Dignity Day in the municipality of State College and encourage everyone to join me in working together with others to make a positive impact and to transform our community and the world into one where understanding, compassion, and love triumph, a dignity-centered community. In testimony whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the great seal of the Borough of State College this 3rd day of October 2022. That was the day that I signed it. So now, that is our proclamation. I would like to invite everyone here, and if you are watching us online, I would like to invite you to share a moment of reciting the Dignity Pledge with me and with all of us here. So it is here on this card right here, and I hope you all have a card on your chairs, and I will just read the Dignity Pledge, and I am taking this pledge as well, and you can keep your hand over your heart or just leave them in your lap, whatever feels comfortable to you. I pledge to to join with others to create a world where compassion, understanding, and love triumph over intolerance, injustice, and inequality. I pledge to be kind and open-minded, honoring the unique gifts and values of others. Thank you all for sharing that. It was very special. And I would now like to bring up to the podium Dr. Beth Seymour, Co-Chair, Commission for Women and Professor at Penn State, Altoona. Dr. Seymour, please.
Thank you, everyone, and it's wonderful being here. It's a real honor to be asked, and thank you, everyone who's joining us out there. I'm going to change gears a little bit. We've learned a lot about what dignity is. I'm going to give us a little history lesson, a little Eurocentric about how we got to this point of thinking about dignity. The definition's just a standard one I'm going to use, the state or quality of being worthy of honor and respect. That sense that every human had the right to be dignified and to have dignity respected is a fairly new, universal, global phenomenon. We have times in the past in different cultures in which it's been appreciated with a little bit of a Eurocentric perspective. Some of the ancient philosophers, most of them, and this is true for a lot of European history and early American history up until the middle of the 20th century, felt that the only folks who really had dignity were the elite, those people who had either earned it through birthright or through actions. So it was a privilege in which they carried the right to dignity. There were a few Stoics and others who felt differently, but for the most part, that was the sense of kind of the general feeling of who deserved dignity. The modern usage really evolved out of the horrors of World War II, the cataclysmic, dehumanizing events of the Holocaust and the other destruction that happened worldwide. But because it heavily impacted, frankly, European communities, that really changed the way that Europeans and people around the world started thinking about dignity. Part of what happened during that time was folks were stripped of citizenship, and in the process of being stripped of citizenship, they were stripped of their legal rights. So you really start seeing the changes to constitutions embedding dignity as a human right in 1945. And that's not a coincidence. That's occurring in a lot of decolonization movements across the world as a result of World War II and the horrors of World War II. The UN Declaration that inscribes it as human right is in 1948. Today, there's over 150 countries that have as part of their constitution dignity recognized as a human right. And so what we've been talking about of this essence of dignity being something that every human, by their basic humanity, deserve is a fairly new phenomenon. So it's an intrinsic right that cannot be stripped away, and in particular cannot be stripped away by the state. And that's deliberate because of what happened during the horrors of World War II. So the basic elements are intrinsic worth of all human beings, the recognition and respect of that intrinsic worth by others, and the state's duty, so thank you, Mayor, the state's duty to protect human rights and human dignity. You see in a lot of protest movements, starting in the middle of the 20th century into today, that this essence of people recognizing that not only are they fighting for legal rights and recognition in largely minoritized communities, but that they're also fighting for human dignity. And so let's just pick a few to talk about the civil rights movement in the United States. It wasn't just about laws. It was actually about being able to live a dignified life as a black person. The Arab Spring of 2011, we saw that. I hope you remember it, but we saw it going across North Africa, parts of Europe, into other parts of the Middle East. One of the common threads in Arabic in the marches, and I speak Arabic, it's part of my academic background, but part of what you heard was the word karama, used consistently, and that translates as dignity. They were fighting for the dignity to be human. Part of the reason was it was enshrined in their post-colonial constitutions. And it was a recognition that people had that they needed that dignity. Today in the Ukraine, you see much the same phenomenon, where folks are fighting for the dignity to be Ukrainian in the assault of sort of Russian aggression. And if I may go back to the Middle East again, but Iran, we see a continuation of movements that have been going on in Iran really strongly for the past 12 years. But this is a new era in which we see some of these movements. So do pay close attention to it. It can get lost in all our busy lives. But they too are fighting for basic dignity and a recognition by their state of their right to live dignified lives. So it's a very short pocket history, but I wanted to give us that context a little bit. And now it's my great honor to introduce Dr. Ashley Patterson. She's Associate Professor of Education. I think that's newly earned, and so congratulations, for the College of Education at Penn State. And so Dr. Patterson will deliver the keynote address on dignity in the community. Thank you, Dr. Patterson.
Hello. It is such an honor to be here with each of you in the room and with those of you in the virtual audience celebrating State College's very first recognition of Global Dignity Day. I'd like to thank everyone who worked hard to put this day together, everyone who came out to share perspectives and visions and encouragements as we all think about the ways that we as individuals can honor the dignity that each of us possesses, while we also see, acknowledge, and celebrate the dignity in others. I want to commend Penn State and the individuals who poured effort into this event, especially because I think it's an incredibly meaningful thing when we consider the fact that Penn State is a land-grant institution. And though that comes with a very fraught past, part of our commitment and our responsibility is to contribute to and serve as a beacon for the community in which we as an institution are embedded. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, about the idea of dignity as an inseparable component of community. So again, my name is Ashley Patterson, and I'm an associate professor in the College of Education. And for the last 7 years or so, State College has been my community. So I'm speaking to you today not as a professor, not as a critical researcher and pedagogue, not as a mother of 2 sons, not as a sister, a daughter, or a wife. I'm speaking to you as a member of our shared community. And for me, that's really what dignity is about, that connectiveness that bolsters our shared humanity. We heard from our speakers today, and thank you everyone for your comments. We've heard about what dignity means and the idea that dignity is the undeniable, irrefutable value that each of us has simply based on the fact that we're humans sharing the world together. And that notion is what I've been reflecting on and what I've sat and thought about in order to figure out what I would say today to commemorate such a momentous occasion. So in my day-to-day life as an educator and a researcher, I'm focused on the many facets of educational equity and the idea that education is a means for achieving the skills necessary to dismantle and disrupt the systems that perpetuate inequity. And when I think about my role, I like to say that I am unwaveringly standing for what I believe in rather than fighting against what I don't. But today I'm going to break my own rule a little bit and think about what dignity is not, because I think in some ways that helps us illuminate what it is. So one thing that dignity, this acknowledgement and appreciation of our own value and the value of others, one thing it is not is ahistoric. I think sometimes we can think about insisting upon acknowledging the dignity in others as this overly utopic way of understanding the world. I'm talking about this way we think we should just be happy-go-lucky all the time, even in spite of the fact that some people are actively denying our dignity as individuals. So I don't think it's it's the case when we're seriously thinking about the concept of dignity, though. For instance, right now, I'm speaking to you and standing on grounds that were usurped, that were stolen. And I daily enjoy the benefits and pleasures as a result of the theft of that land. I benefit from the undignified actions of those who came before me, and yet I still have inherent value, indisputable inherent value. I can both understand and know this truth and also recognize that same inherent value in others, while also asking that others recognize my value. It's complex and a difficult set of understandings to hold at the same time, but holding all of them together gets a bit easier, I think, when I realize that I don't have to deliberate the reality of harm as a matter of insisting upon dignity. Being able to understand the people I'm in community with as potentially flawed, while also being no less human than I am, that doesn't erase the pieces of the past that have gotten us here, and it doesn't diminish the fact that we have to know where we came from in order to identify a better, more effective, more equitable, more dignified path forward. So another thing that dignity is not color evasive. I think that sometimes we think, if I'm going to be able to fully appreciate another person, then I can't notice things like their race or their language or their political beliefs or who they love. I can't notice if they've been incarcerated or if their documentation is recognized by the government or if they worship in a similar way that I do. I'm supposed to ignore the fact that a person is Black in order to see them with dignity. I'm supposed to ignore the fact that a person uses a wheelchair for mobility if I'm going to see them with dignity. And that is not the case. If you don't look at me and see my brown skin and make an attempt to try and understand what the world might look like to me because of the body that I wear as I'm walking through it, then you're not really seeing me. And if you don't actually see me, then how can I be worthy of dignity in your eyes? So this, again, is a complex notion. It feels like it's full of contradictions to be able to both notice differences and uniquenesses and not to unduly judge based on those differences. It feels like a contradiction to acknowledge differences in order to see beyond them. But in order to really, really appreciate the value that each of us is endowed with, this is exactly what we have to do. We have to recognize our own and each other's value, not in spite of our differences, but because of the joys and the insights and the opportunities for celebration that our differences make possible. I think about a garden as a way to think about how dignity of individuals relates to the vibrancy of a community. So the diversities and the many beauties that individuals contribute to the community, the beauty of those diversities are akin to a garden for me. I would much rather see a garden that's full of all different types of flowers, all different colors, all different petal shapes and patterns. I'd much rather see that than a black and white garden full of just one flower. And for me, at least, some part of my appreciation of the garden is really an appreciation for the vastness of difference that gets encompassed in a shared space. I'm appreciating both each individual flower and the fact that all together, they make the thing that brings me joy and that we call a garden. For me, the beauty and appreciation of that garden requires each individual flower, but that encompassing beauty cannot be contained by any individual flower alone. So as we're thinking of that individual flower, the person in relation to the garden or the community, the last thing I'll say about what dignity is that dignity is not an individual pursuit. Recently, as a community, as a global community, we've been thinking more about the importance of mental health. And as this concept is becoming more and more a part of our everyday understandings, I've been thinking about what constitutes self-care, which is an idea that gets a lot of focus in the emerging mental health conversation. And there are some understandings of self-care that limit the conceptualization of the self to that of the single individual. I believe a perspective that holds seeing others with dignity at its core endorses a definition of self-care that understands the individual as one important but inextricable component of a network of people, a community. When I think about caring for myself, I'm thinking about how I can ensure that my community, made up of other individuals around me, are able to exist in a way that is good for them and also good for me. That doesn't mean that I need to always be sacrificially thinking of myself last, but I do need to think of myself as not being completely separate and disconnected from those around me. As Archbishop Desmond Tutu explained, a person is a person through other persons. Or Cesar Chavez, we cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others for their sakes and for our own. Both of these gentlemen are explaining to us what gives life to our personhood, what allows entire communities to grow and prosper, our connections with others. That's what allows for that growth. I don't know about you, but it's really difficult for me to think about how I can have a connection with others, how I can think about their achievement potential and their personal development if I don't see them as valuable, and if they don't see me as valuable either. So going back to this garden, a garden full of all types of flowers loses its collective beauty if any one flower is taking over the others. If they're spreading their roots in ways that means that others don't get enough water, if they're fanning out their petals and leaves in ways that others are denied sunlight. Rather, each of the flowers in a garden has more potential to contribute to the beauty of that garden as a whole if they reach their full potential while also making space for others to be sufficiently nourished and prosperous at the same time. I'm imagining this garden as I think about the fact that there cannot be any true justice of any kind. No racial justice, social justice, environmental, linguistic, socioeconomic justice. No justice can be fully achieved if we don't hold at the core of our efforts and considerations the humans that are involved. So we heard a little bit from Dr. Donna Hicks, who has done a lot of work thinking about how we take up this idea of dignity, and one thing that she cautions us from is collapsing dignity and respect. So she explains that everyone deserves dignity. You don't have to do anything special other than be a member of the global community of human beings on this earth to deserve dignity. And she also explains that respect is different from that. We earn respect by treating others with dignity. So I'll close with this thought and a call to action and just a few notes of appreciation to each of you. Thank you for the opportunity to be in community with you today. Thank you for taking time this afternoon to recognize and celebrate your own dignity and the dignity of those with whom we're sharing this local community and our global community as well. Thank you for seeing my value as you've listened to me share with you just a few of my thoughts on this topic. And now comes the call to action, which I'm going to phrase as another appreciation. Thank you to each of you for the one thing that you're going to do today, one tangible, intentional effort that you're going to make before you go to sleep tonight to earn the respect of at least one of your fellow community members by embracing their value, by honoring their dignity. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, everyone. We would like to thank all of our speakers, individuals that listened via WPSU, live stream, and in-person attendees. A special thank you to all of the public officials and PSU senior leadership in attendance with us today. Please take some time to enjoy the light refreshments up against the wall and drinks that have been provided. If you utilized the State College Borough municipal parking garages, we do have vouchers for you, so you can get out without having to pay. I'll just take a pay cut. But again, everyone, thank you. I know this deeply meant a lot to me as a community member, and all the work that you all do is just amazing and so needed. So thank you, and enjoy some refreshments.